Hello everyone. So today we are going to do question power of x comma n. So basically in this question we would be given with two numbers and one number would be x, that is our base, and another number would be n, that is our power. So from all ordinary power question, how this is different is in that sense that our n could be positive also, our n could be negative also. So here, because of these things only, we are required to change our question accordingly. And moreover, here our base is in double rather than in the form of integer. So this is how it is different from ordinary power question, which now comes to the next part, means doing it in brute force manner. We can do this question in brute force manner, but the thing which is here is that we are given constraint in such a manner that we can't do it by brute force. The constraints are of x are in this manner, right? And even n is in this manner. Because of this fact, we can't use simply brute force and do this question. By brute force, I simply mean that we would be simply multiplying x with x until n times. Basically, just using a for loop and going I from 1 to n. This would be the brute force which we could use, but the thing is we can't use this brute force because of the constraint which are being mentioned here, right? So because of this fact only, we are required to optimize this particular solution in such a manner that it doesn't give us TLE. Now for that fact, we could simply check that how we can optimize it. See, when we are given with some power, like x raised to power 2 is there, how we can write this? We could write this simply like this, right? If we are given with x raised to power 6, how we could write this? We could simply write this x raised to power 6 as 3 into x raised to power 3, right? So and even if x raised to power 5 is given, how we can write this? We can write this x raised to power 4 into x, right? And further, this x raised to power 4 could be written like this. So finally, we could write this, right? So because of this thing only, it simply comes up that we are simply dividing a larger problem into various subproblems. So here comes the idea of optimizing this particular solution. And while we would be optimizing this solution from order of n, which was basically brute force, we are simply optimizing it up to order of log n, which is our optimized solution. So this is the idea. Basically, this is the idea of doing this particular from brute force to optimized solution. Now one more thing is there of this negative numbers, right? So regarding the negative numbers, how we used to solve the negative numbers means power of negative numbers. So basically, if we are given 2 and we are given with negative number like this, how we can write this to avoid the negative number of the power? We simply reciprocate it and the power is as it is, right? So it will be simply like this only. So this is the answer which we are required to return when the power is negative. So this is the only thing which we are required to do. Now let me explain you further. So basically what we are required is, here we are having this because the power could be even also and odd also. So in that sense, we are required to divide it into two parts. One part for the fact when it is even, then we could simply divide the powers as it is and multiply them together. Else, if it is odd power, then we are not required to divide, but rather that we are required to simply subtract, and then we are required to multiply with the base. The way we were doing before means when the power is 5, then what we were doing, then it was 2 raised to power 5. So what we were doing was we were doing like this, 2 raised to power 2 into 2 raised to power 2. Basically, this was for the even part, and this is because of the odd part. We were simply multiplying our base with the other even part. So this is what we are doing here. Now comes the next part, which was for the odd negative part. For negative, we would be simply passing 1 by x rather than x to the function and passing our power with the negative sign, so that this particular, which was already negative, it could be simply nullified with this particular negative sign. And then our base cases, basically, because we would be doing this particular thing in the form of recursion, so that's why we are required with base cases also. And base cases are by of this in that sense that if our n is equals to 0, that is, now further we can't divide it, right? When we reach this particular condition, they will simply return 1, because if 2 raised to power 0 is there, then it is simply 1 only, because anything raised to power 0 is simply 1. Or if n is equals to 1, then in that sense we are required to return the base as it is. Even though it is a recursive question, I am making a whole recursive tree, we can simply see that how it would be going ahead is simply it would be divided by 2 or subtracted by 1, divided by 2 and divided by 2. Basically, it is going itself half and half in nature. So that's why the time complexity is simply log of n, and the space complexity is also log of n, because in recursive stack also it will be storing the maximum height of the recursive stack would be this only. So that's why space complexity and time complexity both are same here. So now let me walk you through the code. In that code also there is one trick in this, but these two portions that I'll explain you there only. But the basic idea starts from here. So let me go towards the coding part. So now here, the thing was that as it is only means these are the two base cases, that is n equals to 0, then we are required to return 1.0. This 1.0 is there because of this particular thing. That is as per the requirement of question. And then n equals to 1. Then we are required to return just x. But when n is less than 0, that is our negative case, then we would be passing with these parameters in it, that is the negative of n and 1 by x. Because of the fact when we are having this 2 raised to power minus 3, then we are required to calculate it in this manner. That's why we are putting the negative sign in front of this, and we are simply reciprocating this particular thing. So this is the thing which we are required, and that is the thing which we are doing here. Now comes the next part, the main portion of this question. This is for the fact when we are doing it in for even powers, then yes, we would be simply doing the integral division of the power, and here we are simply doing x into x, rather than we could have written here, that is we could have written here x is equal to x into x, but rather than writing this here, we are simply passing this in this function, and that also works fine here. And the other thing which is there is regarding this portion, this simply says when the power is odd, then rather than doing that particular portion which I was doing there, means not just x minus 1, but for the part n minus 1, rather than doing this particular part, what I'm doing here is I'm simply taking this particular function only, the thing which is done here, means this result is being taken, and then I'm simply multiplying with x. That is the thing which I'm doing here. So these were things which I was saying, that there is a modification in the code, and that is this particular portion only. And then at the end, we are required to just return the result, because we would be simply passing all the cases when these base cases are being encountered, means either of these base cases encounter, or if it is negative, then we are simply modifying our parameters like this, and else for the main function, it will be simply like this. So this is all for this particular question. If you have any doubt, you could comment down. So this was all. Thank you.